All right. All right, let me see right here. I'm gonna try to create a banner right now. Stream, okay. Is it working? Let me see. All right. All right, what up, y'all? It's been a while. No, as you can see, the current situation with what's happening in the world today has blocked some of the events that are happening in the sport of boxing. And we don't know like how it's gonna be, from here on out. But we're gonna see what happens, because like I believe that people are getting their hopes up a, a lot too much for me to see that the sport is gonna be back real soon. But we'll see about it right now. Hold on, real quick. All right, see the comments if there's any. No, none. That's all right. Just checking to see how I can edit some of this. Logo, overlay, background. No, I think we're good. I think we are perfect as of right now. But yeah, like in terms of like the sport right now, like I don't really think that people should get their hopes up at this point. Like we are discussing fights, negotiations, whatever you want to call it, prematurely. But as you can see, the politics, and I'm not talking about boxing politics, I'm talking about world politics, are actually concerned at this point. They're at a standstill as of right now in terms of the events that are happening across the world. Like the gaming community, the sports community, the the school systems, everything is being shut down as of right now. And I don't know, man, like it's really disturbing, like what's going on right now. And I'm not too sure like if people should be getting their hopes up about the sport returning. But however, we can discuss about how the sport can return in an environment like this. And I've discussed this in many streams, like I've discussed this matter, about how the sport can be addressed like in a time like this. How are the fighters going to be going into fights at this point? Because it's not going to be the same like if they're going to continue on with this, because we don't know how long this situation is going to last. Nobody does. But there have been discussions about where these fights should be placed, and I've been hearing they should be placed in studios. I've been hearing that they should still put them in well, not stadiums, maybe uh centers, arenas, like the typical one, like let's say the Barclays Center, for example. The Barclays Center is like probably gonna have people that are like sitting far away from each other, but that doesn't make sense because you're gonna put the fight inside an empty arena, and I don't know, like it's not really syncing well with it. And considering the social distancing rules in society, so I'm not sure like if that could work out, you know, like you also have to factor in the officiating. You also have to factor in the referees, the medics or the physicians, I should say. Everything comes into plan, you know, comes as a factor, I mean, when you're discussing most of these fights in this in this age right now, you know, like that we're in. However, though, if you're gonna put it in a studio, I mean, I could see some ups and downs about it, but I gotta see like how the promoters, the people that are behind the fights, you know, like how they can make something out of that environment, you know, like if people are going to be interested in it. I think people will be interested in it because like you have a lot of people that are at home right now. They're housebound basically. And they really don't have nothing else to do. So they're going to watch something in order to find some type of form of entertainment. And I think we're in that era where a lot of people are staying in and they don't really like going out that much, you know, like even before this issue even before this thing became a big issue. Like we're already entering the digital age where a lot of people are ordering their meals through a phone. They're having their stuff delivered to them. And if they can do that on an application or something like that, then it could potentially work. Because I'm already starting to see people not watch cable anymore. Like they're not really tuning into that type of stuff. But then again, like you never know, man. Like it's very different nowadays. Like the digital age, everything, man. Like, look, I don't know like how long this is gonna last. As I said before, I know it sounds redundant, but I'm not too sure like if we're gonna transition too well into this thing. But they could try to make it work out. And I really wanted to discuss that with you guys on the channel, you know, because it's been a while since I addressed anything on these type of topics, and it's been a while since I've done like fight week breakdowns and predictions. You know, I was already on a hiatus, like doing those type of things. I mean, doing the type of videos and content that I normally do, but now this has put everything on a standstill. Like I'm already trying to explore other areas as well. Like I mean, I was already good at some of those other areas, but I specifically like talking about the sport of boxing because I love fighting in general. You know, like I love discussing combat. That's my forte, basically. You know, I love reading books on it. I love reading up on a lot of old school fighters from any type of discipline. But it's real hard, you know, like in an environment like this that's going on with no type of events going on. But what people can do in this type of situation is learn about yourself, you know, educate yourself on the basics once again, because I think it's already forgotten and lost in translation, you know, from the redundant subjects that people talk about every day, you know, what's going on in politics, but they've forgotten the fundamentals of what really made them a boxing fan or a fight fan in general. And that's the roots. And I think people need to go back to the roots at this point right now. And that could be said in general, philosophically, you know, like for everybody that's going through this issue right now. We need to learn about ourselves basically. And I've been doing that for many years actually. Like I've lost a lot of connections with people that I knew, but I felt relieved at the same time because I didn't have no stress on myself anymore because I understood who I am as a person in that time. And I'm already going on like 4 or 5 years. I mean, I still have people around me, but I don't really like to uh talk to too many people at this point because it's disturbing like how people think and like how recycled it is compared to what other people say. Like it's basically trying to mimic something off of another person. Oh, I see we got somebody. We Battle Rifle. What's up, Battle?
Nothing much. How you doing?
Chilling, chilling, man. Just discussing about where boxing is going, you know what I mean? Like going in terms of this situation and like I think people are kind of like talking about redundant stuff even at this point, like when we don't got no boxing going on. Like I think we're discussing fights prematurely, like we're discussing about freaking Canelo versus Charlo, Andre, this, that, and the third. Like I think we don't know what's gonna happen like within the next year, like this thing is getting out of hand basically. Like I'm already hearing that the president is already prolonging this thing to like 14 days more. Like the schedule is changing every day, you know what I mean? Like I just wanted to get your thoughts on like where the sport is going like from this point.
I mean, to be completely honest, like I just never appreciated the slow burn that the sport has went in. And at least I was okay because they're making the right steps to make sure the fighters are safe. So sometimes the conversations might change, which I'm okay with because, like, if we're completely being honest, that there's a lot of talk about who's the best and who's going to be the best, but there's not really one definitive person at each division because it's so divided with the belts and sanctioning bodies. So I'm okay with the talk, the different talks about here and who's the best and who's going to win, because there's likely going to be a lot of people that really really wanted to compete but they couldn't this year because the Olympics and other fights that we had to see. We just have to see where they can go here from now. You can't really change it. It happened. So
Yeah, I hear you, man. When we're discussing boxing and everything like that, I feel like people are not taking this time to go back in history like we've been doing in the chat recently. We've been looking at old fights, we've been discussing them and how they would go, fantasy fights, even so. But I feel like people forgot about those roots that I was discussing earlier, where what really made them a boxing fan, like the fundamentals of boxing. And I'm not talking about like skill sets or anything like that. I'm talking about like history. I'm talking about like what really brought you into the sport of boxing, you know what I mean? Instead of just like talking about uh who's making this much or who's making that much. And I think people should take this time to learn about like all the older fighters, you know what I mean? Or like talk about the styles of like each fighter. Like me and you, a couple, I think last week actually, we're talking about like Southpaw and Orthodox fighters and even switch hitters like Terrence Crawford and Andre Ward. And I thought that was a very interesting conversation because a lot of people have like a conception of like switch hitters where they think some guy that just turned southpaw for a minute think they're a switch hitter automatically somewhere on the level of Terrence Crawford and stuff like that when that's not the case at all. But those are my thoughts on it. What do you think, man? Like about where people should take discussions at this point right now, besides the whole politic thing that goes on every day?
I mean, hopefully they, learn some history and learn about what came before them, just so they can be a little bit more educated on the sport if they want to. I might just, like, I was thinking to myself, I might just go back and look at history of other sports because there's other sports that I like, and but
Hmm.
I don't really know the history of them as much, like basketball or football. And I was probably going to take some time to look at those too. So probably a good time to look at your fighters ever before you, just so you just don't be confused about what came before and how these belts came into play and whatnot. Okay, maybe you don't really need to search up the history of the belts, but just which fighters, were dominant back in the day.
Yeah, like just discussing like about like how the economy was like in boxing back in the day, or
Hmm.
um like how the contenders were moving up back then,
Hmm.
like
Basically.
in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely do that. Like Marlo's Corner is like the perfect channel to learn history from, and he's probably doing a lot based on what's been going on. He hasn't really had any fights to cover, so definitely we can if we can get on the same thing. Start a little boxing trivia. People get like unrivaled on the channel, or I don't know, maybe the librarian.
Oh yeah. hmm it's because like people, they don't really want to look at the history because like what I think it is they don't know where to start. Well, some of them don't know where to start, or like they're just like willfully ignorant, like they don't want to learn history at all. But like for the other people, they want to try to find a starting point where like where they could learn from history. Like do they start at the Harry Greb era? Do they start at the Jack Johnson era? You know, but yeah, man, it's kind of tough discussing like other subjects for them at least because I don't know, man, like they really don't want to talk about neither the fights of the past, like the past 10 years or in the early 2000s whatsoever, you know what I mean? Like it's a very touching thing, like with this whole isolation thing going on, but it is what it is. Oh, we got Phil Walker. What's up, Phil?
What's up, buddies? How y'all doing, man?
All good.
Hey,
Sure.
like I was just saying, what's up, Phil?
What to do, Battle? What to do?
Yeah, man, I just wanted to get your thoughts on where boxing is going, like with this whole isolation thing going on and like how the promoters or like how the fighters are going to go through this from here on out and like how boxing forums are going to be discussing subjects at this point, like besides the typical politics thing, that everybody loves to talk about. Like we were talking in the chat about fantasy fights throughout the entire 2 weeks that this has been going on, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are on this whole situation.
Well, man, my thoughts on the situation is, and I was pondering on doing a show about how does this pandemic affect boxers that are in the later that are in the later part of their career, and boxers that are, just kind of was gaining some momentum and starting to, get the fights that they wanted. Um, my main thing is that I just think that as far as older fighters, guys that's kind of trying to wrap their careers up right now is in a real bad um, position. And even guys that typically tend to go off the rails when they have too much of a break is in a real bad position as well. Just as far as this whole thing goes, man, I think that people will start. It's a reality check because are going to start to realize. And when I say people, I'm talking about the boxers, the promoters, of course, the managers are going to start to realize that hey, each day is very valuable in a sport like this where you never know how long your tenure may be. So I think this is going to drastically affect the way people conduct business. But you're always going to have your guys that's going to go against the grain and think the way they're handling business is better than the next guy. But I think it's going to land more so on the fighters now. I think they're going to have a bigger say in how their career goes and who they want to fight next. Because at the end of the day, when the promoters are still promoting and the fighter is retired, all they have is their legacy. So I think the fighters are going to take more control and say, hey, you know what? We need to start making these big fights sooner. We need to stop waiting on them and just grow the sport as we as it's been predominantly mega sport for such a long time. So that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I hear you, man, and I totally agree about that whole reality check thing. Like to push these fights going on, and you also mentioned something about fighters that are like young and old that could be impacted by this, and the younger fighters maybe not so much because they still got a lot of time. Obviously, like they're still acclimating to their bodies in order like to develop their man strength and everything like that. But in terms of like fighters that are middle age, and I'm talking about guys like Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, all them guys, this is kind of bad for them because like they're already entering that phase where they really got to step their game up before they start to get old. Like we start to see fighters age by the time they're like 34, 35, and like that's when they're contemplating retirement. But every year counts, man. Like people got to take these years into consideration and try to be as active as possible as they can.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. But when you talk about guys like Keith Thurman, he used to being off for extended periods of time because this
Yo, Phil,
What
you
happened?
there? I think he cut off. Yeah.
Might have to give him a second.
Hmm.
But yeah, like it's for a lot of boxers should reflect on what they can do. Like I'm like there's a lot of boxers that can work on what they can work on their craft as far as now, because of course like you don't have anybody to fight, but you have like this opportunity to train, be like, what if I have my missteps or where can I get better and stuff like that, because nobody's really fighting right now. So it's not like everybody is just moving ahead of you right now, because everybody's in the same position you are. So you can
Yeah.
arguably get better right now because nobody's fighting.
Yeah. And I also was going to ask you guys, like, what do you think about George Foreman's comments on Deontay Wilder possibly beating Tyson Fury easily in the trilogy, and like how beneficial do you think George Foreman will be to like Deontay Wilder? Like does he have some similarities enough like to understand like how he can work with him, or would he actually still be a good manager or anything like that? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know if it's so, okay. If you're comparing somebody like an all-time great to Tyson Fury, yeah, like of course, maybe he could find a way to beat him easily, but I don't think he can necessarily teach Wilder as easily, because for the simple fact that yeah, I think there's a way you can beat Tyson Fury in a not so hard way. But yeah, I'm coming from the outside looking in. I'm not a boxer like Deontay Wilder, so it's easy for me to say it. I do think there is a way he can beat him, though, but it's just a hard thing of can you teach the person what they need to know and can they apply it? Because people just think it's all just trainers. No, you need a boxer that's going to retain your information and put it into work. A lot of boxers are stubborn, so that's the biggest thing. You have to find a trainer that's going to be like, I can't take no BS from you. You have to be 100%. You have to listen to what I'm saying.
Hmm. Yeah,
well,
man.
well,
And
what I
Phil, were you gonna say something earlier, Phil? Like, cause you kind of cut it off earlier.
yeah, my mic just completely just went out on me. But no, I was
All
just
good.
saying like
Mhm.
guys like Keith Thurman and Earl Spence. This is not necessarily a bad thing for them because they actually need that extra time to let their bodies heal up. But a guy like Terrence
Especially
yeah, a guy like Terrence Crawford, which is a pretty active fighter. I think he's probably, anxious to get back into the ring right now. But at the end of the day, it's going to be some people that's going to benefit from this. It's going to be some people that's going to hurt from this. Um, but ultimately, I think when everything gets back to somewhat being normal and these kind of events start to happen again, I think the fighters are going to take more control of their careers. But as far as the George Foreman and Deontay Wilder deal, I'm somewhat along the lines of what Battle just mentioned. Um, do I think, you know, a Hall of Famer such as George Foreman can figure out a way to beat Tyson Fury? Absolutely. Um, But again, I can provide you with all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't apply that knowledge, then it's useless, right? But I do think,
Mhm.
as far as if anybody can figure out a way to work with a guy that's a power puncher, um, essentially, and come up with a game plan in order to find a way to land that punch, I think it would be Big George. But Big George, his whole essentially his whole career, he was of course known for a puncher, but Big George actually had a pretty good jab, and he was always very very patient in the ring, and he waited his time out in order to set up his punches and eventually get that shot that he wanted. With Deontay Wilder, I don't know. Sometimes he gets super duper anxious. He gets ahead of himself. Technically, he's not very sound. Everybody knows that already. Um, but the only similarity I see in those two guys is that they are definitely extremely hard punchers, and that's how they finish most of their fights. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, man, I get you. And as for me, like I actually understand where George is coming from, in terms of like an outline planned for Deontay, but I don't know if that outline is long enough. Well, like I don't think he could implement that kind of outline within a year or 6 months, and I'm not too sure like if Deontay, well, it just like you guys said, he needs to mentally adapt himself to that type of game plan or like to that type of a mentality that George Foreman has, where he's gonna try to get to Deontay, but it's gonna be all up to Deontay for him to take that knowledge, in terms of the delivery system that George is gonna implement on him. And it's gonna be interesting, like I'm not gonna lie, but it's not to me, I don't see it happening within a year. And I don't think he beats Tyson Fury in a year or even 2 years, like because what George Foreman is planning for him, he's planning for a guy that's like in his mid 30s already. I think he's like 34, 35 to my recollection. And
34.
34. Okay. Yeah. So he's in his mid 30s, but it all depends like if Deontay can put himself in that mentality. And I'm not too sure if he can, like based on what I'm hearing, about his camp, the way that he doesn't really listen to Mark Breland and JD's is really the one in command and stuff like that. That's what I'm hearing, So I'm not too sure. Maybe he could because like as soon as he sees George Foreman, he's gonna automatically respect him, like in terms of being a medalist, being a power puncher just like him, that was renowned. That was like known in his era as well for being like the biggest hitter out of his generation. But it all depends, man.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you got to think about, George Foreman fought in two different eras. You understand what I'm saying? He fought in the era
Yeah,
with the guys from the '90s, and he fought when Ali was in his prime. So you got to think about it. And then he retired for I don't know how many years, but an extreme amount of years, and he came back and he was still competitive. So if anybody can come up with a game plan, I think it could be George, and I think Deontay Wilder, as you mentioned, is going to respect him just because of who he is, what he's done for the sport, and he actually wants to put that effort forward to say, "Hey, young man, I believe in you. I think you can do it, but you just gotta listen to me." A lot of people don't mention this, but a lot of times when you have somebody that believes in you and wants to put that work in to help you achieve your goals and help you succeed, that motivates you beyond measure. So I think that'll probably be a spark that'll be lit for Deontay Wilder to help him be the best Deontay Wilder he can when he goes in to face Tyson Fury.
yeah, I hear you. And it's interesting because like Deontay has been looking for that cosign like from a fellow former champion American fighter for quite a long time, and this is like the most he's been getting, like he's been getting it from Evander Holyfield. So like that was a starting point as well, but not so much from Mike Tyson because they don't kind of relate in some type of way, or like I don't know like what's going on. It could be something personal. I'm not too sure, but from the looks of it, based on their dimensions, like Mike Tyson was a lot more different than Deontay Wilder. You know, like Mike Tyson was more fundamentally sound. He was more of an anomaly, basically, because like he was a guy that was 5'10" and fighting guys that were like over 6 feet, getting inside them and going to the body using a lot of combinations and a lot of feints, a lot of bobbing and weaving, everything like that. Whereas Deontay, like he's never really had that time to implement like a foundation, you know, because like he started very late in his career in boxing, you know. So it's gonna be interesting, man. Very interesting. But yeah, man, like I was also gonna ask, have y'all been keeping up with that EWBSS thing that's been going on, you know, like that whole digital fight thing?
Wait, what was it?
Yeah, the whole WBSS thing, you know, with the fighters like from the past fighting each other like on fight night and all that kind of stuff. Do you guys really believe that some of those matches would actually happen like that? You know, like recently they just put Winky Wright as the winner over Sugar Ray Leonard, and I think that could be. I don't know, man. Like, what do you
Uh,
guys think about that? And they also had Joe Frazier beating Lennox Lewis and forgot who else that was crazy.
I mean, it's hard for me to jump straight to conclusion. I haven't seen any of them. It's cool. I guess it's cool to talk about it because it kind of like I never seen it, but once you told me about it, it kind of reminded me of the movie Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa when they put
Yeah.
when they put Antonio Tarver against Rocky. It gets on like the
Hmm.
ESPN like cartoon, and they try to play it out. And like if I'm listening to it from like the first hand, maybe Winky Wright could beat Sugar Ray Leonard, but he wasn't really a 147. He wasn't really a 154 pounder. It seemed like Sugar Ray Leonard. He is the one of the best boxers that ever laced up the gloves. And as far as on the back foot, he's one of the best. But at the same time, he's not a 154 pounder. But at the same time, Winky Wright never went 15. So that's a hard. I mean, you know, trying to hit somebody with I think out the rip I'll go with Sugar Ray Leonard just because he throws way too many punches. And then I
Hmm.
definitely would put Lennox Lewis over Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier, don't get me wrong, one of the greats, but he's just too small for Lennox Lewis.
Yeah. What do you think,
Yeah,
Phil? Like
I'm
on
gonna
those
take
matchups?
I'm gonna take a note out of Lennox Lewis's book because he's one of my favorite heavyweights of all time. I like the way he did his career in its entirety. I'm gonna take one of his quotes when people ask him stuff like this. I don't like to cross arrows, man. You fight the best of your era, and that's it, man. That'll be your story. So yeah, these kind of conversations can go in circles for days. Um, so yeah, I don't like to cross arrows, man. I hate doing that.
I hear you. I hear you. Man, when I was thinking of that Sugar Ray Leonard versus Winky Wright fight, like I was thinking to myself, maybe the judges would probably give it to Sugar Ray Leonard because they would see like the offense that he would be implementing, you know, the combination, his output, and everything like that. But Winky would probably block a lot of those shots, you know, like it would be a very close fight, in my opinion. But I would have to agree with Battle Rifle, you know, in terms of Lennox Lewis versus Joe Frazier, man. Like I just think that Lennox is way too educated, you know, in terms of like dictating range and everything like that. Like he was more refined, you know, like he was like the most refined fighter during that day in the 90s. And Joe Frazier was like less refined version of like those small heavyweights that would like battle some of the bigger heavyweights and try to get inside of them. And like he was like one of the earliest ones that did it. I mean, obviously you had like the old school fighters like Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, everybody like that. But I would have to agree with Battle Rifle on that one at least.
Yeah, it's fun. They, of course, they're going to do a lot. We're going to do just like us. They're going to do a lot of fantasy matchups that we may or may not disagree with, and that's okay because if the fights are not happening, you gotta have something you can do.
Yeah,
Hmm.
of course, man. I'd much rather, say somebody. I'd much rather say, hey, um, let's take the best fighters of this era, and then let's take the best fighters of a different era, and then just kind of match them up and find out, where you would rank them based on their resume and the guys they performed against. To me, that would be more logical than having these guys go face to face. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these, of course, these new fighters, not, of course, Wink is retired. So, the story is still it's done, right? The story's already been told. But you got guys like Manny Pacquiao and stuff like that fights at 47. That I think would be a good guy that would fall into that era that could possibly compete with those guys. But I think that would be more logical. Rating the guys versus their era, and then rating those guys up against eras and mixing it all up versus fantasy matchups.
For sure. And I was thinking, man, like about this whole thing about modern fighters versus old fighters, and a lot of people try to, well, a lot of people do say that older fighters win, but there's another type of group of people that say that the modern day fighters win because the whole vitamins that they're taking, and well, not I shouldn't say it like that, but they have all these supplements, and like sporting, like the sports how do you put it, Ah, the sports supplement industry like really amp these fighters up, like they made them a lot more athletic, they made them a lot more stronger. But you could also argue about the older fighters being a lot more psychologically tougher because they would be going 15 rounds or more, and that's what people would give them the edge in. But I don't know, man, like it's an ongoing debate, like you said, like it could go in loops and everything like that.
Yeah,
I
I do agree with you. That I think that the fighters of today they do have a edge as far as technology and just the overall science of taking care of your body. They do have an edge on that, but I think the older fighters have an edge just as far as overall fundamentals. I think the older fighters are much more fundamentally
Yeah.
sound than a lot of the new fighters are because stylistic, it's all about styles now. A lot of guys like to imitate and mimic a lot of the older fighters, a lot of their styles, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the fundamentals get lost in the shuffle with a lot of these new fighters because, for one, you don't have as many gyms as you used to have, and for two, a lot of times when you have guys in the gym, they don't know a whole bunch about fundamentals in boxing. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be advantages and disadvantages for both eras, but the younger generation definitely has the technology and the science backing them, but the older generation has the wisdom and the fundamentals backing them. And I think that's when you create something like a Floyd Mayweather, right?
Hmm.
When you get
Oh,
somebody to both worlds. So that's just kind of the way I feel about that.
yeah, man, like all these fighters, they nowadays when they go into the gym for the first time, they just want to throw like a flurry of punches and get a knockout, like I feel like n- fighters have been like the whole standard of fighters, like of how they perceive boxing should be, like in terms of just knockouts and everything like that, but not every fight is won by a knockout. You got to work on other stuff, and that's where like the fundamentals, as you said, get left out. And a lot of fighters keep on doing that even today, like we see them be a lot more lethargic, we see them be lacking a jab, not knowing how to cut off the ring or make any type of adjustment, like once you take away what they've been doing for so long, they don't know how to like step into another gear. And it's kind of a discouraging, because like you see like all these athletic specimens, and when I look at a guy like Jermel Charlo, he's very athletic, he's very talented. Like you could do a lot more with that guy. But when Tony Harrison beat him the first time, man, like it was kind of how do you put it, man? Like disturbing to him because like he didn't know how to make some type of adjustment, like besides looking for Tony the whole entire time with like the same offense.
So you think he was kind of exposed?
Yeah, I I hate
Well,
to say it,
well,
Mhm.
let me say this right here. I think a lot of that has to do with what kind of fighter in your head you believe that you are. And I think your trainer plays a major part in that. You got to think about it. Jamel switched to his trainer is Derek James now, right? And before he
Mhm.
was trained by Ronnie, which is you know uh, as far as the style and the techniques and just the philosophy in which these two guys train in is totally different, right? You have
Mhm.
somebody like Ronnie that is more so an old school mindset that's going to tell you, hey, stay behind your jab, box, and when your shots open up after we've been grinding the whole fight, then you take advantage of them. Versus Derek James is more, hey, a straightforward, we're going to be an offensive style, fighter. So, I think sometimes, switching trainers can be good, but I think in his case, for that particular fight against a boxer, that wasn't the best decision for him. But that's just my opinion, though.
I hear you. What do you think, Battle? Like on that whole thing about Jermel like not making an adjustment in that fight, and the whole trainer switching thing.
I mean, my opinion is going to sound really black and white. But it like if I can try the best way to convince you after I say what I'm about to say, because I mean before I say what I'm about to say, because honestly, I think Jamel was exposed before that fight. Um, I can see it in many fights beforehand. I just personally thought that he just needed to work on a lot of his craft. Like as far as fundamentals, he's fine. He's not bad. It's just that I find him extremely timid in a lot of matches. I've seen it with the Gabe Rosado fight and the Vandes Matarosian fight, which I actually thought was kind of like it was a give or take. I didn't say I don't necessarily think that Mataros won, but it was like one of those fights. It was just like it was really hard to score because it was that close. And with the first Julian, who was it? Was it Julius
John
Jackson?
Jackson?
John Jackson.
Yeah.
John Jackson fight when he was getting outpointed in the scorecards, and I was just like, had this guy never learned how to cut off the ring? And don't get me wrong, John Jackson, he's crafty. It's not gonna You're not gonna look great every single fight, but it was fights beforehand when I was just like, Jamel really needs to work on his craft, and that's why I always favored the favorite Jamal over Jamel because he actually I feel like he could adapt a little better in some situations. So I actually
I
thought
think
that,
as far as
huh?
favoring, I agree as far as favoring Jamal. I've always favored Jamal out of the two. But continue.
Yeah, and I think Jamel, like, if I'm being completely honest, when the Tony Harrison fight came in, I was immediately like, okay, well, Jamel's going to get that because obviously he has the power. And I remember everybody was just like, Tony Harrison don't really got the skill. I'm like, wait a minute. So I remember I picked Tony Harrison out of spite just because I was just like, okay, Tony Harrison, and I knew he had the skills. He just didn't. He just probably just didn't have the chin because I saw this guy outbox Jared Hurd for like 8 rounds, like, and then get knocked out. And I was like, Jamel could easily be that number one guy, but he just doesn't work on his craft enough.
Yeah, it's almost as if like he suffers from mental blocks, like you just mentioned something about him stepping up in competition even by a little bit, and somehow like he gets timid, as you said. It's almost as if like he has like these lapses in judgment about like what he should do, and that kind of like plagued his entire career, you know, like in terms of the later portion at least. And I don't know like if these whole once a year, twice a year fights are like enough for him like to improve, you know? Like that's my issue as well. Like fighters like only taking one or two fights a year when really it should be three, especially like if they're barely in their late 20s or early 30s, you know?
Well, as far as him stepping up in competition, when I go back and I look at Jamel's resume, I see Trout, I see Lubin, see Rosado, see the guy that what is it, Jones. Um, I don't think his level of competition has been lacking. I think he has the better resume out of the two twins, but you know, I just think that his levels of his game that severely suffer, and he can work. Being a headhunter isn't the key for him. I think boxing being patient and waiting for his shots because if you have the power to lay guys down, then guess what? You probably need to box more. That's what I tell people. You don't need to headhunt. If you have the power to lay guys down, then wait for your shots. You understand what I'm saying? He's doing it the opposite
Yeah,
way.
you gotta let the punches flow.
Exactly. So,
Hmm.
I just think it's
Exactly,
again,
Phil.
yeah, yeah. I think it's just some key parts of his game that he could probably absolutely work on. But as far as his resume goes, I think he has a pretty good resume at 154 pounds, and he's been a champion for a very long time. Like I said, you got great guys on his resume. You got Tony Harris twice, Austin Trout, Rosado, Jones, Lubin. I mean, he's got a great resume.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? Like I actually picked him in the rematch with Tony Harrison because I something told me deep down that Tony Harrison kind of lacked a little bit of a confidence, you know, like in terms of keeping it consistent with like the whole thing about being a champion and making some type of adjustment against Jermel. But personally, I actually thought that Tony was actually still winning that fight up until that round that I actually called the 11th round, where Jamel actually stopped him there, you know, and hopefully that kind of like takes something in Jamel in terms of like him trying to improve as a fighter. But we're gonna have to see, man, you know, because I still think his brother Jamal is actually a lot better than him fundamentally, and they both do things right. Actually, you know, I'm actually agreeing with what Battle says, but I still think that Jamal is a lot more refined, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jamal is definitely the more refined out of the two, and I think he's more logical, and I think his boxing intellect is better than Jamel's, which a lot of people don't give intellect a lot of credit, but I think he's just a smarter fighter all around. I don't think he lacks action. I think he does what he needs to do at the right time, and most importantly, he listens to. That'll get you a long way in the boxing game. And that's why we probably saying that he's probably the more refined and the more fundamental out of the two twins. But they're both very, very talented, and they still have a lot more to offer in boxing, even at this time in their career in their 30s.
Yeah, man, like the whole Charlo twins, man, like they have a strong base compared to a lot of fighters that I see like in the game, you know, but they never really took the time to capitalize on it because like they fell in love with like their entire athleticism, you know, and I'm not saying like physically, you know, like in terms of trying to look good and all that. I'm talking about just like their power and everything and how they knock out a lot of their opponents. But if you ask me, man, like if you send those guys to the Kronk gym, like when they were prospects, they would have done a lot better than what you see today. You know, like you would have seen a better jab, like than you already see with somebody like Jamal. You know, and a stronger right hand and better setups, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I tell you this right here. Different fighters react different ways to different trainers. I think that Jamal is comfortable with Ronnie because Ronnie's been working with him for such a long time. And I think Janelle felt as though Ronnie couldn't bring a certain aspect that he felt he had in him to the table, and that's why he ended up going with James. Um, but that's the weird thing about trainers, man. Like, look how well Virgil does with Andre Ward, but he doesn't have that same success with his other fighters. You know,
Yeah.
I think trust it has a lot to do with trust and believing in the stuff that the trainer is providing you as far as the knowledge. Receiving that message. So to say, I mean, different gyms, of course, different gyms are known for different reputations. So I agree with you completely on that. But I think a lot of that stuff has to do with trust and trust in the trainer and the fighter.
I hear you. And that's what makes the Canelo fight a lot more interesting, like if that fight ever happens in the future, like the style matchup. It's almost as if Jamal can implement something that Golovkin did, like in terms of like nullifying some of Canelo's head movement. Maybe not a lot of it because I still thought that Canelo was winning some of the some most of those rounds, like in the second fight, primarily that we're discussing. But I think Jamal has the mentality to adapt a better strategy, like he could kind of do that, but make a better adjustment than what Golovkin did, so that's what kind of makes it interesting. But that all depends on him because, like, based on that Korobov fight, man, like it's very hard to see, to see him like make some type of adjustment.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. The matchup is an awesome matchup, and it'd be one that I definitely be looking forward to seeing. Hopefully, it happens. I think Jamal has the skill set, has the size, has the jab, has the power to give Canelo a run for his money. Um, but again, you can have all the tangible assets, but if you can't apply it with skill and knowledge, again, as I said earlier, is useless. So, but it does, as you mentioned, make it a very interesting fight for all the reasons that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I hear you. And man, I really think that he should fight Demetrius Andrade as well, like just to see like where he is at right now. Both of these guys, like I want to see Demetrius try to unify with Canelo though, in my opinion. But I also want to see the Jamal Charlo fight because I think that fight is way overdue. And if you ask me, I think that that would be a better fight than Canelo versus either of them, because like both guys are very athletic. Both guys can move on their feet whenever they want. And Demetrius, he's a very awkward fighter, and like he could disrupt the rhythm of Jamal. And Jamal has enough of a strong base to disrupt that rhythm that Demetrius goes into. So those are some very interesting fights, if you ask me.
Yeah, that fight is very, very interesting. I wish those guys would just both go ahead and sign a contract and get it on. Um, but those guys are in similar position as far as where their careers lie at this moment. Um, so if your careers are in similar places, which I think Jamal is of course to me the more um, let me say the more known and to me the more established fighter. I think Demetrius Andrade at this point in his career has been a lot of his stuff has been solely based on potential, and I think he has a lot of potential, and I think um, it's time for him to show the people of the boxing world what a lot of people believe he can do. I just hadn't seen it from him, and I'm looking forward to seeing it against a level guy. He's been fighting, C plus and B minus guys for a very long time. So he needs to step up and he needs to take his career serious because I think that's been his biggest downfall, considering how he's been all over the place since he turned pro. But he is a very talented young man, and these two guys definitely need to get it on. Absolutely, I agree.
Do you think that he's kind of regressing a little bit? Because I've been seeing that a lot more recently based on the level of his competition that he's been taking. Like he doesn't really have enough iron to sharpen himself with as of recently. Like I'm starting to see people say that he's kind of declining from the lack of competition. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not going to say he's declining because I've never seen him at his best. I've never seen Andrade like, oh my God, this guy is he's really serious. So I can't really assess if he's declining or not. But what I can assess is the level of competition that he's been competing against, which to me isn't very good, right? And I think because the competition isn't very good, I think he gets in there and he gets anxious, and it affects his decision making because he wants to dust the guy off real fast because he doesn't rate his opponent, right? So if you don't rate your opponent, you just want to get in there and get him out of there. So you may lose some of the fundamental aspects that essentially got you to the point to where that you're a champion. And I think that may be something that may be hindering him at the moment. But again, I can't say he's declining because I've never seen him at what I consider to be a elite level. I think he has a lot more in the tank, but again, he has to take his career very serious to get to that point. And I think now, after all this situation, he's probably going to do that.
Yeah, I hear you. What up, unbiased?
What's going on? Oh, you guys are talking about Andrade. I mean,
Yeah, we're
I
talking about like the technical aspects and stuff. Like is he regressing with
I
like the
think he
level
is.
of competition?
I think he's
And
been I think it's been regressing since he got to 160. I should the 154 Andrade I saw was a lot, in my opinion, like cleaner. When he fought Vanis, you could see like spurts and where okay, this guy, I see him put it together here, and okay, yeah. But when he moved to
yeah,
160, I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? It just looks like he's throwing everything out the window. And it could be to what Phil is saying, like he's looking at the guys as lesser quality of opponents and he's trying to get them out of there and swinging crazy and wild and whatnot. And his footwork to me has always been bad, but now it just looks like now it's a lot worse. Like his balance is so bad to the point where in that Selecki fight, Selecki literally just like did a shoulder bump and Andrade almost fell over by himself. I'm like, oh, wait, what? So his footwork, I think, is a problem. And I don't know if he can get better. I don't think he can, but what I'm saying? In my opinion, he's regressing. And I think it's dangerous for him to be regressing and fighting a Jamal. I mean, Andrade's old trainer even said like that's a suicidal fight for him. What's his name? It's Adam Pena. And that guy trained with Andrade since like 2011. And he came out and said that's a suicidal fight for him. So, I mean, I think Andrade at this time is probably not going to get better. He's 32, so and technically he is in that sense, losing his prime.
hmm
I mean,
yeah,
I guess
man.
oh, looks how
hmm
you look at it. Do you mind if I send a link to get the smoke?
Oh yeah, you could send it. Y'all gonna hash it out or something?
Oh, who me and get the smoke?
Yeah.
No, we're cool. We're me and Smoke are cool.
Oh, okay. That's what's up. See right here. Oh, there's a private chat. Didn't know there was a private chat. Be back in a minute. What's your channel name, bro? So I can the Texan man. You could sub on. I'll probably send a link like in the Hangouts, and you could see the channel right there because like the Texan is a very common name on YouTube. So I'm probably gonna change it to something else, maybe like Texan Live and Direct or Texan Entertainment, Texan Sports Talk, whichever.
My bad. I
What
cut
up,
out real
man?
quick. I cut out. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, but yeah, me and Get the Smoke are cool. You know what I'm saying? I think you're talking about Black Horseman, and I don't think that'll ever
Oh
change. You know
no,
what I mean?
like I'm talking about like debates in general. Like I love the debates that y'all be doing, with on D's channel, like you get this smoke. Yeah, the
Yeah.
whole competitiveness and stuff.
Oh yeah, me and Smoke will always get into it because we just have different opinions. But I've come to the point where I can respectfully disagree with Smoke, and he'll have his opinion and I'll have mine. And the thing with Smoke is there's no changing his mind because, well, actually, let me take that back. Sometimes you could, but Smoke, he lives in the realm of facts too, like me. If you could change my mind if you present facts, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, now. Sometimes you just have to, let things go if the other person is right. So, but
Yeah, man. As long as y'all find like a neutral ground to settle on, y'all are good. Like regardless, like if you got different viewpoints on something, or this, that, and third.
oh yeah, I mean, how do you see Andrade? Do you think he's regressing at 160, or what do you think? Or he's just never been that good?
I think he is regressing little by little, but however, I think he can get back into the rhythm because like he is like still in that age group of guys like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. He might be a little older though, but that all depends on his competition, man. Like he has to gradually uh take a step up, like let's say fight like a Rob Brandt or a Ryota Murata, them
Right.
type of guys before fighting like a Jamal Charlo.
I man, even Rob Brandt, that'd be a good ass fight for this dude. I mean, like
Oh yeah.
a Liam Williams. What does that really do for your resume? Like, I'll take a Rob Brandt over a Liam Williams any day.
Yeah, man,
Give me
that's
that.
like already going down domestic level, if you ask me. What up, get the smoke?
Hey, what's up, people? How you doing?
All good. What do you think about Andrade, man? Like, do you think he's kind of regressing with the level of competition, or like, do you think this is just like a minor thing that he could eventually fix on, like if he steps up a little bit, or like, do you think going into like a Jamal fight immediately would be like way too bad? Going based off like the competition that he fought in his last fight with Luke Keeler and stuff like that.
Yo, Smoke, are you there? Maybe he's having technical issues or something like that.
Yeah, it's all good.
But yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree with your assessment. I mean, he is at the age of like Earl Spence and Bud, but I think you know what the difference is for me. I think like Spence has at least fought like he's at least fought Brooke, Mikey, and then Porter. And Crawford, he had his whole 140 run. I know a lot of people don't really want to look at his competition as great, but he fought Victor Postal. He even fought Gamboa. Gamboa has good a good amateur background, and he knows what to do in certain spots. We saw that versus Tank Davis, and he was doing veteran tricks versus Tank and had him like flustered at points. Well, a prime Gamboa, he did that to Crawford at points, but Crawford obviously overcame that. But with Andrade, it's like who did he really fight throughout his whole career, which we could assess, and that would solely be like Vanis Martirosyan and Jack Colque. So I think it's kind of different because Bud Crawford and Spence, they kind of got put through adversity in their careers. Whereas, I mean, I know Andrade got knocked down in the Vanis fight, and that's the only adversity that he's ever faced, really. Other than that, and the Colque fight, you could say too, because that was a really close fight. Besides those two fights, that's pretty much it. Spence has faced Porter, Brooke, that was a tough fight. Mikey, that was like a boxing exhibition. And he's showing levels, Earl Spence. I'll give him that. Andrade to me has not shown me levels like throughout his whole career, really. 154, I could say, oh wow, okay, that's nice. Yeah, that was nice. But I could say that for prospects as well. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
and for competition wise, I think he's regressing. Right now because he's not fighting the right fighters and not fighting the right fighters. Obviously, is going to slow down your skill sets. Like iron sharpens iron. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough.
And the thing about Terrence Crawford, man, that a lot of people overlook is that he fought a lot of styles actually, man. Like he's gotten a better look than probably almost anybody besides somebody like Canelo in the entire game. Like he fought a pressure fighter. He's fought the technical boxer puncher. He's fought a pure boxer. He's fought the Eastern European style, with the whole sticking and moving. And a lot of people don't give him credit for that because they're not like glamour names, but when you look at it, they were champions at one point and they were top contenders at one point as well. That's one thing they overlook when they're talking about Terrence Crawford in the context of a style.
That's very true. And in comparison to Andrade, you know, you could say he Kolke, right? He's German, so you could give him Kolke and you could give him Vanis. But other than that, what styles has he really faced? I mean, Alexander Fox, maybe that gave him some problems early because he was tall, but and Fox dropped him too. So it's like I don't know, man. I think Bud Crawford and Spence have faced a better opposition than Andrade and are more proven because I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what Andrade, man. He's just a big question mark to me. I don't know if he could get better now either because he's 32. So I don't know.
Yeah. Get the smoke, man. I was gonna ask you, like, do you think Andrade is like declining a little bit, or like based on his last competition, like he fought Luke Keeler, and do you think it's like a little bit too dangerous to go straight into a fight after that with somebody like Jamal Charlo or Canelo? Do you think he should like go like a notch lower, with a guy like Rob Brandt or Murata, somebody like that?
Um, yeah, I was answering your question. I guess I was having technical difficulties, but um,
All good.
yeah, I'm not sure if he's regressing just because or the level of competition he just can't get up for. He had managerial issues and sort of derailed his development. And it just either we haven't seen the best of Andrade or we have seen the best of Andrade. We just don't know. Um, he's starting to remind me a little bit of Tevin Farmer at this point. He's just like calling out the one guy, waiting for the one fight, while he's
Yeah,
fighting a bunch of low-level competition and struggling against him. Who know? I don't think that bodes well for a Charlo fight next. Um, see if what we're hearing about what Charlo's path is of his next couple of fights is, I think he will if Charlo comes through, depending on what it looks like in those fights, of course. I expect him to be just a level above Andrade. So he's got to get cracking. But yeah, there's just a lot of unanswered questions for him, and he, as Unbiased was, pointing out, it's a little long in the tooth to be to have so many questions still out there about him. El Jefe called him the 40-year-old virgin last night, which I thought was pretty funny. But it's a pretty good descriptor of where he's at. He's kind of old to be this unproven, and a champion in 2 weight classes.
and people get mad at me, right? Because they want me to be blinded and just go by PBC hate. And I can't lie to myself and be like, yeah, Andrade's showing me great. Like, I actually was favoring Andrade to beat Jamal Charlo. But then I saw the Luke Keeler fight, and I'm like, this dude low key is regressing to me. Because the Selecki fight, was I impressed by that? I really wasn't too impressed, but I thought he beat him comfortably. Yes, he got buzzed in the fight a little here and there, but and then the Luke Keeler fight was like, where's your fundamentals? Like, I know you're unorthodox southpaws, but we got southpaws out here that are actually have good fundamentals and could put it together well too. Like Earl Spence, you got Winky Wright for an example too. It just to me, Andrade, his style to me is not. After watching that, the looping shots, and we know straights get to the target first. I mean, I just see Jamal icing him. That's just my opinion. I have to keep it real. I can't be like, oh, he's PBC, so fuck Jamal. Like, I get that for some people can do that, but even if you're with the PBC and I truly believe you could win the fight, then I'm gonna pick you. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and speaking on the whole southpaw thing, a lot of fighters that are southpaw try to do like the whole slick style and everything like that, just like moving on their feet, on the back foot, working behind a jab and all that. But once somebody makes an adjustment on that and they take it away, they got nothing. And I'm surprised that a lot of them don't try to like mimic fighters like Winky Wright, that were very fundamentally sound, had
Right.
a great jab. They understood how to use the high guard a lot more effectively than just not throwing back anything at all.
And that's the thing with Andrade. Like he leaves himself open a lot. Um, Somebody who can pick up on with a high level boxing brain, they could pick up on his movements. Like he just kind of leans over. You know what I mean? And you could set him up for shots too when he does that. That's why I think Canelo does like probably knock him out. And I could see Jamal icing him too. Just like I made fun of Jamal. Don't get it twisted. I made fun of Jamal in the Korobov fight, but if you rewatch the fight, he did definitely landed that straight right on Korobov multiple times in the fight. So I mean, I think he's definitely going to land it on Andrade. I just can't be ignorant to that. You know what I'm saying? I can't lie to myself and say he's not going to land it.
Yeah, fundamentals, activity, and power will give Android a problem, no matter what form it takes. And once you start adding intangibles that the Charlos and Canelo have, it's kind of nightmarish for him.
Yeah, man.
Those fucking Charlos, bro. Those Charlo brothers, they're I mean, I don't like them personally, their personality, it rubs me the wrong way, but those motherfuckers are blessed with good genetics. That's something that
Mhm.
nobody could take that away from them. Great stamina, solid chins. Tony Harrison was hitting Jamel with like a 5 piece, and the dude was just coming forward eating it. I'm like, all right, okay. So Jamal got a solid chin too. I thought J Rock was winning the fight. J Rock was hitting him with everything, and he just ate the shit. So I mean, I don't know. Can Andrade hurt Jamal? Like I
Yeah,
don't know, man.
yeah. Some guys make having money seem like it's not that cool, and like the Charlos are like that. Like they're still mad even though they're getting paid. At some point you figure, it'll chill you out and bring a smile to your face maybe. But nah, not those dudes. They just seem to be never happy.
But that's my major
Right.
gripe about Andrade, man. Like his balance is very horrible, if you ask me, man. Like that's been my ultimate issue of him, because like when I see the Charlo brothers, it's like Unbiased said about the whole genetic thing. But what the thing about the Charlo brothers is that you never see them off balance or anything like that in any fight at all. Like they sit down on their punches very correctly. They do everything correctly, but they rely on their power too much, on offense initially too much. What do you guys think about that?
The thing with them though, it's like they're gonna get you. You know what I mean? Like they're going to hit you. Like yeah, they throw everything hard. It's eventually gonna land though. That's the problem, right? When Tony Harrison was
Mhm.
doing what he was doing, I was like biting my nails, like, yo, listen, just stay focused because Jermel can land. And then what happened? Jermel landed. Korobov was outboxing Jamal. I felt like he won the fight, but he almost got knocked out in the 12th. And he almost got knocked out in another round too before that. So it's like those guys, they're fucking workhorses. They both of them, they're gonna land on you. Like you can't just run away from Jamal or Jamel for 12. I think it's impossible. You know what I mean? But if you have good lateral movements, you can move, you can be slick, and you could outbox them. Then yeah, that could work for you. But just going in there and trading with them, or just going in there and we saw Harrison put Jermel on the back foot for like 11 rounds, but he gassed. That's because Jermel can keep that pace. Harrison can't. Not a lot of fighters can keep that pace that those two can work at. And I mean, as much as I don't like those motherfuckers, I'd have to admit that.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jamel got an engine on him, man.
yeah, I think both of them have pretty good engines, great tanks, all that stuff. For me, I think um, their promotional duties or them trying to wear a promotional hat is sort of is a little bit detrimental to them as boxers. Like they haven't put it all together yet. I think as a promoter, you have to be, you have to sell things. You maybe have to be a little bit deceptive in your in the way that you move. And you know, fans they like knockouts, and them trying to not only sell you a knockout, but then as a promoter sell you on a knockout, but then they go into the ring as fighters and try to produce the knockout that they've been selling. I think is a problematic for them. I think they can sell knockouts as a promoter, but then as a fighter, you need to take what you can get and be opportunistic and just win fights. And I don't think they've made that switch in their heads yet.
Well, Jermel has he promised knockouts and he delivered. Besides the Tony Harrison fight, he pretty much knocked out everybody's face, right? Who didn't he knock out?
He did not Trout.
Trout. Okay,
That
yeah,
that was the
Trout.
big that was the big one that sensitized me to this whole thing. It was just like he was looking for and then Harrison the first fight, they
Right.
just swing for the fences to try to
Yeah.
produce this knockout so they can say that they're so I think that they fancy themselves and they're selling themselves as knockout artists. And I think that I mean you can sell yourself as a knockout artist, but then trying to go in the ring and be a knockout artist, I think is stopping them from getting the knockouts and is sort of is stunting their development.
Yeah, I think fun. I mean, when you say development, you mean like being a special fighter. I don't think.
But just getting better. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like, just finding all the wrinkles in their game that would produce the knockout versus just swinging for the fences.
yeah, they need to set up their knockouts better. I agree with that 100%. I agree.
I think Jamal needs to triple up on his jab a lot more than he really does right now. Because like I actually think that if he changes levels on it, like he could get somewhere with it. You know, like if he were to throw like a body jab to Canelo, I want to see how Canelo would react to that, in my opinion.
I think lateral movements give Jamal hell. That's his one. I saw that in the Brandon Adams fight, and Canelo with that lateral movements and head movements, like is in a different planet versus Adams. So that's why I don't see Charlo beating Canelo. But when it comes to like an Andrade, I think he ices Andrade. And I mean, listen, Jefferson brought up some really good points about Derevyanchenko versus Charlo. That I mean, Charlo might beat a Derevyanchenko as well, but I would favor Derevyanchenko because his movements. But yeah, I could see
Yeah,
him
the footwork.
hurting Derevyanchenko too. Yeah.
Yeah, they say the thing about the Adams fight though, but I don't think Canelo is just going to be in survival mode. I think Canelo is going to be there to actually try to win the fight and try to win rounds. And then that will give Charlo some opportunities. And Charlo is not going to quit. There's just no quitting this dude. So I don't know that I can't remember the last time Canelo faced a guy who is going to be relentless, who has the skills, the level of ability that Charlo has. Like Kovalev was good, but one of the reasons why I was picking Kovalev against Canelo was I didn't think Kovalev could take Canelo. I mean, I didn't think Canelo could take Kovalev's right hand, but Kovalev didn't really throw the right hand for whatever reason, and we just didn't see a lot of it. So we're not going to see. It's not going to be that way with Charlo. And I don't think Charlo's as big a puncher as Kovalev. No, but he's going to be throwing those hands over and over and over. Regardless of what's happening, unless Canelo stops him somehow.
I think Canelo's going to make him a little more honest. Like Charlo is going to try, and I agree he's going to go for it, but Canelo's going to counter him a lot, and I think that's going to make him more honest, and then it'll become a chess match that I don't think he's equipped for. And then that's where it's just like Canelo just is going to outbox him in totality.
See, I think that's where the relentless and then being hard headed comes in. Like if you saw the Korobov was tagging him over and over and then didn't keep him honest. He just kept coming, believing in his game plan and believing that he was going to get somewhere eventually. and it took him a long time. And I think he was dropping rounds, and the reason why some people are saying that Korobov won is because it took so long for Charlo to make the adjustment.
I agree. I mean, I could agree with that, but I think Canelo's like a way better fighter than Corb. I just think Canelo has too many tools for Charlo. That's pretty much how I see the fight. But I'm not saying.
It's
I
will
think
to me. It's will over intelligence a little bit. A fighter like Mayweather would have made the adjustments as soon as he saw. You know what I mean? And like
yeah.
you're gonna have multiple adjustments throughout the fight. I don't think Charlo's like that. I don't think he's gonna be like, oh, this guy is so good. Let me like step back and become a smarter fighter.
But when
There's
he's
very few
eating,
fighters that are critical thinkers, like Floyd in the game. Like you had, when I say critical thinkers, I think of fighters that think outside the box, like they know they're very self-aware of what they have in their arsenal. And there's very few fighters that I see that have that in their game plan besides Andre Ward in recent years. And when I look at,
Yeah,
mhm,
go ahead. I was
yeah,
gonna say,
yeah.
no. You're saying recent years. Go ahead, Texan. Finish your thing.
Mhm. The prospects and like when I see contenders and champions, the only ones that I see that can implement that type of critical thinking is somebody like a Devin Haney, Caleb Plant potentially, those two potentially. And I could see it in Tyson Fury, believe it or not, the way that he makes adjustments, on the fly. Like they think outside the box very well, if you ask me. Go ahead, Smoke.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I liked AJ's. I like what AJ did in the Povetkin fight. Sort of early. I like the adjustment that he made with that jab to the belly. I mean, jab to the body, and Povetkin. That was a pretty good. That was pretty astute. Um, Loma, Loma makes adjustments, but I don't think he makes necessarily adjustments on what's happening in the ring. I think. I think he makes adjustments on what's happening in the fight, but I don't think his adjustments have so much to do with what's going on. I think he figures out what's not working, and then he goes to another style of his. I think he has like an A, B, and C plan, and
Yeah, I
he
hear
can
you.
just do a bunch of stuff. So after the Linares, knocked him down, he came in and was like, okay, I'm gonna just stay in the pocket and I'm gonna set him up with something. But I don't
Yeah,
think that
that's
was.
easy. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that he has the ability to try different stuff, but that's a little bit different than making the right adjustment because you see that the guy is like having a lazy jab, so you come over the top kind of thing. I just think he has a lot of things that he can try, and he'll just try it out and throw it up against the wall and see what works.
When I see Lomachenko, like as he's getting older, like every time that I see him try to make an adjustment, it's kind of seems hard for him to transition from plan A to plan B. Like we're starting to see that fight by fight, and that kind of makes me skeptical, of picking him against somebody like Teofimo Lopez or even Devin Haney. A lot of people call me crazy for saying that shot in that fight, but I just see something stylistically that Devin Haney can capitalize on besides the whole thing about experience and everything. But I do agree with people on what they're saying about like Devin Haney uh, could potentially lose it as well because doesn't have like I don't think he's seen I don't think like he understands like the angles that Lomachenko has, like in terms of like trying to face him. But I actually think that Devin Haney is a lot more how do you put it, man? Like he's a lot more confident in his ability than most fighters that Lomachenko fought. And
Yeah,
he understands like his own abilities as well. That's what I think about it.
yeah, he definitely knows who he is in there, and I think his ability to control distance is going to be a problem for Loma. Um, and his size and his brain actually, because I think that Devin Haney is very adaptable in there. Um, yeah, I think he has a really good boxing brain and definitely makes the right adjustments. It's just that his level of competition, I don't think, has prepared him for Haney. but I think he's been well trained and well schooled.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the
yeah,
right thing.
yeah, yeah. I think that, um, and also I think that he will perform better under the lights. Like he doesn't seem to be a shrinking violet kind of guy, but he is a little bit ahead of himself. I think so. He could be that could become arrogance, right? Like he's got to figure out like how to stay in the moment and understand objectively what's happening in front of him instead of just believing that he's the best so much. Like he has to go out there and prove it a little bit to me. Um, but yeah, just little things like that could spell disaster when you're talking against an operator. When you go up against an operator like Loma, um, you get over and anxious, you overextend yourself, you think you're doing better than you are. Like he sets traps. That dude figure, he will he will change up what he's doing significantly and give you different wrinkles and different looks. And Devin Haney's got to be on top of his game the whole time.
Yeah, Devin, really wants to grow fast real quick, like he already sees that lifestyle, like the people that he's grown up around with, like throughout the entire time and like increasing his platform, like he already wants to touch that level. But I really want to see him take fights with guys like Javier Fortuna, and I think that's a great fight for him because like Fortuna actually brings something to the table, in terms of like a experience fight for him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people have Devin Haney rated, definitely top five, if not two or three, then like four, not even fifth. And his resume, like the level, the caliber of opposition that he has, doesn't really warrant that. It's just like what you see out of the guy and the way you project forward. You know, yeah, he's got. You take somebody like Luke Campbell, who's lost to Loma and lost to Linares. He still at least has been in there with, at least has been in there with a Loma and a Linares. Haney hasn't even done that yet.
Yeah, that's my only thing about Haney as well, man. And in terms of all the other prospects, man, like the only person that's actually doing it is I gotta say Teofimo Lopez, like he's actually the one with like the better resume. Well, I think he has a better resume out of all the prospects that are like around those lower weight classes. Well, that turned into contenders, but then became champions. I probably shouldn't say prospect anymore, man,
I
because these
think.
guys are already. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if you would where you'd consider Luke Campbell in there. I guess not really. He's not like 20. He's approaching 30. I think he's mid 20s or on the other side of
He
25
was
at
born
least.
in 1990. Like the thing about the 90s, man, like with the people that I grew up with, like
So
we're
he's 30.
divided in different. Yeah, we're divided in different categories. Like the 92s through 90s, they tend to like butt heads with each other, because they're in the same group. And then you got guys that are like from 93 to 97 and like different generations, like within those three gaps. And then finally you got 98 through 99. And like they have like a different mentality compared to like the other years, like within the 90s.
Yeah, those are my kids and
Hmm.
nieces and nephews kind of thing. My kid is 98, and
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about. Um, but yeah, 30 I wouldn't throw in there at all. Like Luke is an established guy, so I guess yeah, we really. But see, Tiafimo is just a couple of not Tiafimo, but Tank. Tank is just a couple of years older than those dudes, but
Hmm.
he's not really in that area. He's not really seen that way because he's been doing it so long at a higher level than these guys. Um, so this is like
Yeah, since like 2014, 2013, man. Like these guys barely came on the scene like in 2017 and 2018.
yeah. So he's older. He's a different generation from them professionally, but he's the same generation as them age wise. Um,
Yeah.
but also, I think that you can start to see that I don't know, his development has plateaued a bit, whereas theirs is still right, is still on an incline. You know, they're
Hmm.
still going up. Those guys are still getting better and better in their fights. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right, man. I'm about to close the show down right now because my battery's running low and I'm probably about to eat right now.
I didn't even know you did lives. I don't know if I subbed. Someone gave me the StreamYard link. I didn't even know whose I was coming to, but I'm
I'll
definitely gonna
probably
sub.
drop a link like in one of these chats, you know. Like I'm about to start doing them again. Like I've already had a channel. I started uploading videos and stuff like that months ago, but ever since this whole situation that's going on in society, that's like already doing it worse for me because I was already inconsistent with those videos, like in terms of like being active and all that. But I'm starting to do it a lot more, man. Like I'm gonna start doing these streams a lot more actually.
Oh, that's what's up. Because if you do it, that means I don't have to. And
Yeah.
that's what's up. I'll
Mhm.
piggyback on you guys' work, and I'll come and support, and lend my perspective whenever I.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you on the show, man. Like we need minds like yours, unbiased, battle, Phil that came on earlier. A lot more people, you know, that way they could get involved, especially on El Jefe's chat, man. That's what I like. What I like what he's has going on there too, you know.
Yeah, he's another guy that's grown a lot and has improved a bunch in a very short time span.
Hmm.
But
Well,
anyway,
already, man.
yeah, man.
Hmm.
Thanks for having me. Until next time.
No problem, man. Take care.